Genghis Khan, a name destined to resonate across continents, entered the world without the advantages of wealth, noble birth, or any guarantee of future greatness. His early life was marked by hardship, hunger, cold, and a constant struggle for survival. Yet, within this challenging childhood, the very foundations of what would become the largest land empire in human history were quietly taking shape. Long before he became the feared ruler stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea, he was simply a boy named Temujin, born into a world that demanded a strength far beyond his tender years. Temujin's birth occurred in 1162 near the Onan River, nestled in the heart of the vast Mongolian steppe. His father, Yasujai, held the position of a leader within the Borjigin clan, a respected but by no means dominant group. The Mongol tribes of that era were fragmented, quarrelsome, and perpetually engaged in rivalry. Raids, kidnappings, feuds, and ever-shifting alliances were the norms of their existence. Danger was always just a day's ride away. It was within this fiercely competitive environment that Temujin took his first steps in the world. Although born into a warrior clan, Temujin's initial years were not defined by privilege, but by sudden and profound tragedy. At the young age of 9, he accompanied his father on a journey to seek a bride. However, on their return, Yasujai was poisoned by members of the Tatar tribe, an act fueled by deep-seated tribal animosity. Without a strong leader to protect them, Temujin's family was abruptly cast aside. The tribe abandoned his mother, Holon, and her children, leaving them to fend for themselves on a harsh and unforgiving steppe. From that moment forward, Temujin's childhood transformed into a relentless battle against hunger and the ever-present threat of death. He learned to forage for roots and berries, hunt small animals, and endure the biting cold of the Mongolian winters. What might have broken another child instead forged an unyielding resilience within him. The boy who once relied on his father's name was now compelled to cultivate his own inner strength. Each hardship, every empty belly at night, every starvation-filled winter, became an integral part of the steel being tempered within his spirit. Even amidst these trials, Temujin displayed qualities that distinguished him. He possessed an extraordinary gift, the ability to inspire unwavering loyalty. This was not the kind of loyalty coerced by fear, but rather the kind earned through demonstrable fairness, genuine humility, and unwavering determination. As a young boy, he formed a crucial bond with Jamuka, who would later become both his greatest rival and a significant catalyst in Temujin's ascent. The two swore brotherhood, a sacred and inviolable bond on the steppe. At that moment, no one could have foreseen that their friendship would eventually cleave the Mongol world in two. However, Temujin's life was far from tranquil. During his teenage years, amidst a conflict within his own clan, he was captured by rival tribal leaders. They restrained him with a heavy wooden collar, a deeply humiliating device intended to crush his spirit. Yet, Temujin refused to succumb to defeat. One night, seizing a brief moment when his guards were inattentive, he made a daring escape with the assistance of a compassionate family. This bold escape marked a turning point in his life, reinforcing his belief that fate favored the audacious. After regaining his freedom, Temujin began the process of gathering allies. He journeyed from gur to gur, engaging in conversations with families and warriors who had once followed his father. Slowly but surely, he rebuilt a small but intensely loyal following. What distinguished Temujin from other leaders of the time was his revolutionary perspective on power. While most tribal chiefs prioritized bloodline over competence, Temujin took the opposite stance. He rewarded loyalty and ability irrespective of a person's family origins. This principle would later form the very bedrock of the Mongol Empire, an empire where even a former enemy could rise to prominence if they demonstrated their worth. His charisma and inclusive leadership began to attract warriors from various clans. Temujin established a small military unit, surprisingly disciplined and coordinated for its size. Unlike other Mongol groups, which primarily relied on individual bravery and chaotic charges, Temujin implemented a structured approach. He organized fighters into units of 10, hundreds, and thousands, an innovation that would revolutionize steppe warfare and pave the way for his future conquests. During the late 1180s, tensions between Temujin and Jamuka began to escalate. Their once sacred brotherhood started to fracture under the weight of ambition and diverging visions for the future. Jamuka, representing the old guard of nobility, firmly believed that leadership was the rightful inheritance of aristocratic lineage. Temujin, shaped by hardship and merit, argued that leadership should be earned through demonstrable ability. Their rivalry soon erupted into open conflict, dividing the steppe into two opposing factions. The battles between them were fierce and exacting. Temujin suffered defeats, but each loss refined his understanding of warfare, loyalty, and strategic thinking. Every betrayal taught him valuable lessons about how to assess character, how to reward devotion, and how to swiftly and decisively eliminate disloyalty. Over time, increasing numbers of warriors defected from Jamuka's side to join Temujin, not because he promised riches, but because he offered fairness and justice. Stories began to circulate across the steppe. Temujin protected widows and the vulnerable, punished those who abused their power, and always honored his word. In a world governed by fear and uncertainty, this type of leadership was both rare and immensely powerful. Warriors from distant clans traveled great distances simply to join his ranks. They saw him not only as a formidable leader, but as a figure capable of unifying the steppe and ending the endless cycle of blood feuds. Despite his growing strength, Temujin's rise was far from assured. The Mongol world remained fractured, with each clan jealously guarding its independence. Nevertheless, the seeds of change had been sown. A new form of leadership, one founded on fairness, merit, and unwavering resolve, was taking root across the steppe. These foundations would eventually enable Temujin to surpass all other chieftains and unite the Mongol tribes under a single banner. The boy who had once been abandoned by his own clan was now becoming a force that the tribes could no longer afford to ignore. His story was only beginning, but the world was about to witness something unprecedented. The emergence of a conqueror whose influence would span continents and reshape the course of history. The ascent of Temujin from a clanless outcast to a formidable political power was not an overnight phenomenon. It was a process forged through danger, strategic alliances, betrayals, and a revolutionary vision unlike that of any other leader on the Mongolian steppe. By the early 1190s, Temujin had not only amassed a loyal band of warriors, but had also captured the attention of influential clans, ambitious chieftains, and spies who began to whisper that the son of Yasujai might one day reshape the destiny of all Mongols. One of the pivotal turning points in Temujin's ascent was his relationship with Togrul, the Khan of the Karait tribe. Togrul, also known as Wang Khan in Chinese chronicles, had been a close ally of Temujin's father. When Temujin approached him seeking support to rescue his abducted wife Borte from a Merkit tribe, Togrul agreed without hesitation. This single act, an older Khan supporting a young, clanless warrior, shifted the political balance of the steppe. Together with Jamuka, who at this point had not yet become his mortal enemy, Temujin led a daring campaign to rescue Borte. The success of this rescue elevated Temujin's reputation across the steppe, not merely as a capable fighter, but as a leader who inspired loyalty and acted decisively. Borte's return also helped solidify Temujin's claim to legitimacy, for marriage alliances were crucial in steppe politics. Yet the rescue of Borte did more than reunite a family. It marked the beginning of Temujin's transformation into a rising power. The warriors who fought beside him began to regard him not just as a young leader, but as a man who could turn the tide of impossible situations. His reputation spread. He rewarded loyalty generously, punished betrayal swiftly, and treated even common herders with respect, a revolutionary leadership style in a world dominated by aristocratic privilege. As Temujin's influence grew, so did the resentment of the traditional nobility. Many aristocratic clans saw him as a threat, a man breaking the unwritten laws of lineage and authority. They feared a future where merit outrank bloodline, where warriors might follow a leader because he was just, not because he carried an ancient name. And so factions formed, whispers multiplied, and alliances began to shift like the sands of the Gobi. The inevitable rupture with Jamuka finally arrived. Once Anda, sworn brothers, the two men now stood on opposite sides of a cultural revolution. Jamuka represented the old world, noble birth, strict hierarchy, and aristocratic entitlement. Temujin represented the new, mobility, opportunity, fairness, and loyalty above family prestige. Their rivalry became the backbone of a civil war that reshaped Mongolian history. The first major clash between their factions took place around 1187. Though Temujin fought fiercely, he suffered a significant defeat. Jamukha's forces captured and executed several of Temujin's followers in a brutal manner, burning them alive. This act horrified the Mongol tribes. It painted Jamukha not as a noble leader, but as a cruel aristocrat detached from the suffering of ordinary warriors. Ironically, Jamukha's ruthlessness strengthened Temujin's image as the more just and humane leader. After this defeat, Temujin withdrew to rebuild his strength. He began reorganizing his followers into a more disciplined army. Instead of grouping warriors by tribe, as tradition dictated, he mixed men from different clans into units of tens, hundreds, and thousands. This served two revolutionary purposes. It weakened tribal loyalties and strengthened loyalty to Temujin himself. It was a military system that would one day conquer half the known world. At the same time, Temujin codified rules of conduct, another unprecedented step. He punished theft among his followers, ensured fair distribution of spoils, and allowed commoners to rise in rank. This attracted not only warriors, but also families who sought protection and stability. People across the steppe began saying that under Temujin, the weak found peace and the strong found purpose. Such praise had never been given to a Mongol leader before. The next conflict with Jamukha would be different. By the early 1200s, Temujin had secured alliances with multiple clans, including the powerful Middle Mongols, the Tuds, and remnants of other tribes who believed his leadership offered a better future. Jamukha, though still strong, was losing followers, especially younger warriors who admired Temujin's meritocratic ideals. But as Temujin's power rose, so too did jealousy from his former ally, Togul of the Karates. Wang Khan, now an aging ruler, feared Temujin's growing influence. Manipulated by nobles who whispered accusations, Togul eventually turned against the very man he once supported. This betrayal cut deeply into Temujin's heart, yet it also steeled his resolve. He realized that the old world would never accept him peacefully. The conflict with Togul was brutal. Temujin suffered early setbacks, including an ambush that nearly killed him. For days he hid in the mountains, surviving on nothing but ice and sparse vegetation. But his loyal followers refused to abandon him. They regrouped, strategized, and returned stronger. Eventually, Temujin launched a decisive counterattack that shattered the Karate forces. Togul fled and died shortly after, marking the end of one of the last major obstacles to Temujin's rise. With the Karates defeated and Jamukha weakened, Temujin now commanded more territory, more warriors, and more influence than any Mongol leader before him. Families migrated to join him. Clans pledged allegiance. The dream of a unified Mongol nation, something that had never existed, was becoming a real possibility. By 1204, Temujin's forces crushed Jamukha's remaining supporters. Jamukha himself was eventually captured, not killed in battle, but handed over by followers who no longer believed in his cause. Temujin, showing remarkable mercy, refused to spill the blood of his former brother. Instead, Jamukha was granted a peaceful death. This final act of compassion cemented Temujin's image as a leader who valued loyalty, honor, and justice above revenge. With his rivals gone and the steppe united, a historic moment was approaching, one that would transform Temujin from a tribal leader into the ruler of a new empire. The world was on the brink of witnessing the birth of Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, as Temujin, now Genghis Khan, looked out across the sweeping grasslands of Mongolia. The vastness of his ambition finally aligned with the vastness of the world he sought to conquer. By 1206, after uniting the major Mongol tribes under his rule and forging a new sense of identity among them, he faced a question only the truly visionary ever ask. What comes next? For Genghis Khan, the answer was simple: everything. The steppe had shaped him into a man of relentless purpose. It trained his eyes to see potential in barren land, to sense danger in silence, and to recognize opportunity where others saw only risk. Now, with a unified nation at his back, he would turn outward and test the limits of the world itself. Yet the empire he built did not grow through mere brute force. It grew through strategy, discipline, and a reimagining of what warfare could become. One of the most remarkable aspects of his rise was the transformation of the Mongol army. Previously, tribal warriors fought mainly for their clans and rarely cooperated. Genghis Khan dismantled this old system entirely. He reorganized the military into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, each built from warriors of different tribes. Loyalty was no longer to one's clan, but to the Khan himself. This restructuring broke old rivalries and created a unified fighting machine where discipline overruled personal feuds. The Mongol army became a force the world had never seen. Mobility was its greatest strength. Warriors traveled light, carrying dried meat, curd, and milk, enabling them to ride for days without supply lines. Each soldier had multiple horses, allowing them to switch mounts and stay fresh. They could travel hundreds of kilometers in a single day, an unimaginable feat for armies of Europe or China. But it was intelligence more than speed that turned them into a devastating storm. Genghis Khan created one of the earliest organized spy networks. Scouts rode weeks ahead of the main force, collecting information about terrain, food stores, fortifications, and local politics. No battle was fought without preparation. No siege began without understanding the target's weaknesses. This information network made the Mongols feel almost supernatural to their enemies, appearing where they shouldn't be able to appear, striking with precision that seemed impossible. Their psychological warfare was equally revolutionary. Before attacking a city, Mongol messengers often offered terms: surrender and be spared, resist and face total destruction. This strategy caused many cities to capitulate without a fight. Word traveled quickly along trade routes. Resistance brought annihilation. Obedience brought survival. It was a grim but effective calculus that shaped the Mongols' early conquests. With this reformed army, Genghis Khan set his eyes first on the Western Xia kingdom of northern China. These people controlled trade routes and had tested the Mongols' strength for years. In 1209, he marched his forces towards Xia territory, not merely to raid, but to conquer and absorb. The campaign revealed his genius for siege warfare, a skill Mongols had previously lacked. Instead of rejecting foreign ideas, Genghis Khan embraced them. He incorporated Chinese engineers, siege specialists, and artisans into his army. He built catapults, battering rams, and towers that allowed his forces to storm fortified walls previously deemed impenetrable. When the Western Xia finally submitted, they became the first of many sophisticated cultures to be integrated into the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan's leadership proved again that conquest was not just about subduing enemies, but about choosing which parts of the civilization were worth learning from. Next, he turned his attention to the mighty Jin dynasty of northern China, a far larger, richer, and more powerful state than the Xia. This decision was bold, bordering on reckless in the eyes of outsiders. The Jin possessed massive armies, advanced fortifications, and a long history of defeating nomadic incursions. Yet Genghis Khan saw opportunity in their overconfidence and internal divisions. He attacked swiftly, bypassing strongholds, destroying supply centers, and sabotaging communication routes. His army struck with a rhythm that left the Jin struggling to respond. It was during this campaign that his brilliance as a commander became especially clear. Each battle was a lesson. Each loss was analyzed. Each enemy tactic was studied. He encouraged innovation among his generals and rewarded merit over birthright. In a world defined by rigid hierarchy, this made the Mongol leadership uniquely adaptive. Young commanders, some from humble backgrounds, rose quickly through the ranks because of talent, not lineage. By 1215, the Jin capital, Zhongdu, modern Beijing, fell to the Mongols. The scale of the victory echoed across Asia. This was no longer a tribe of wandering horsemen. This was an empire in the making, a rising power pushing against the boundaries of ancient civilizations. Genghis Khan's reputation transformed from that of a tribal warlord to a figure the world could not ignore. Yet even as he conquered kingdoms, he remained deeply committed to structure and law. He introduced the Yasa, a code designed to govern both military and civil life. The Yasa emphasized discipline, loyalty, justice, and stability. Theft was punished severely. Honor in battle was paramount. Women were protected by law. Religious freedom was guaranteed, a revolutionary concept in the early 13th century. The Mongol Empire, under his direction, became a place where craftsmen, merchants, scholars, and travelers could move more freely than ever before. The world was beginning to feel the tremors of change. On one side were ancient dynasties that relied on tradition and defensive might. On the other was a rising empire built on mobility, innovation, and strategic brilliance. But Genghis Khan was not done. His ambition extended beyond China. He cast his gaze toward the West, toward Central Asia, the Islamic world, and the vast trade networks that stretched from Persia to Europe. The caravan routes were rich with opportunity, but also filled with danger, banditry, and political fragmentation. For a man like Genghis Khan, this disorder signaled both opportunity and challenge. The stage was set for his next great campaign, one that would shock the Islamic world, shake empires to their foundation, and expand the Mongol influence farther than any nomadic empire had ever reached. History was preparing to witness conquests that would redraw the map of Eurasia. And Genghis Khan, now at the height of his power, was ready to unleash the full force of the Mongol war machine. With the Mongol Empire now stretching across vast portions of northern China and the steppes of Mongolia, Genghis Khan turned his attention towards Central Asia, a region of rich cities, fertile valleys, and treacherous politics. Unlike the nomadic tribes he had conquered, these city-states were settled, wealthy, and often fortified with stone walls and armies trained to repel invaders. They were not accustomed to a leader like Genghis Khan, one who combined strategic genius with psychological mastery. The first of these targets was the Khwarezmian Empire, which ruled over modern-day Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and parts of Kazakhstan. Initially, the relationship between Genghis Khan and Shah Allah ad-Din Muhammad seemed promising. Trade caravans from the Mongols were welcomed, and diplomatic messages were exchanged. However, a fatal miscalculation by the Shah changed everything. He executed a Mongol trade envoy and attempted to assassinate another. For Genghis Khan, this was not merely an insult. It was a declaration of war. In 1219, Genghis Khan launched one of the most extraordinary military campaigns in history. His forces, organized with impeccable discipline, swept across deserts, mountains, and rivers. They adapted to every terrain, using speed and surprise to overcome numerically superior armies. Cities that had once been considered impregnable fell to strategic ingenuity and relentless assault. Through a combination of siege engineering, feigned retreats, and psychological warfare, the Mongols systematically dismantled the Khwarezmian state. One of Genghis Khan's most feared methods was the use of terror as a weapon. Entire cities were destroyed when resistance was encountered, sending a chilling message across the region. Obedience brought survival. Defiance brought annihilation. Yet, he was not cruel for cruelty's sake. His terror campaigns were calculated to minimize long-term resistance and to consolidate control efficiently. Merchants, artisans, and scholars were often spared, relocated, or incorporated into Mongol administration, strengthening the empire through knowledge and commerce. The conquest of Central Asia demonstrated Genghis Khan's ability to combine military innovation with administrative foresight. He established relay stations for communication across the empire, known as the Yam system, enabling messages and orders to travel hundreds of kilometers in days. He created tax systems and laws for newly conquered populations, integrating them into the Mongol political and economic structure rather than leaving them in chaos. This blend of conquest and governance set the foundation for the empire's long-term stability. Meanwhile, the Mongol army continued to evolve. Engineers and scholars from the conquered territories shared knowledge of siege technology, astronomy, medicine, and mapping. Genghis Khan encouraged his generals to adopt new techniques from foreign experts, blending them with traditional Mongol warfare. The result was a military machine that was both adaptive and terrifyingly effective, a force capable of striking across continents with unmatched efficiency. Genghis Khan's vision extended beyond military conquest. He sought to build an empire where commerce and culture could flourish. Trade routes were secured, ensuring safe passage for merchants and travelers. Artisans and scholars were relocated to centers where their skills could be utilized effectively. Religious tolerance allowed a diverse array of beliefs to coexist under Mongol rule. This pragmatic approach distinguished him from many conquerors, ensuring that the Mongol Empire was not merely a realm of violence, but also a hub of exchange and innovation. Despite his success, challenges remained. Governing such a vast territory required constant vigilance. Rebellions, local rivalries, and political intrigue were persistent threats. Yet Genghis Khan faced them with the same discipline and strategic mind that had propelled him from a clanless warrior to ruler of the Mongols. Every challenge was an opportunity to refine his administration, test the loyalty of his generals, and expand the boundaries of the empire. By the mid-1220s, the Mongol Empire had become an unparalleled force. Genghis Khan had unified the Mongols, conquered China's northern territories, obliterated the Khwarezmian Empire, and established governance systems capable of sustaining a vast and diverse population. The empire was no longer just a collection of nomadic tribes. It was a transcontinental power that would shape history for centuries. Yet Genghis Khan's story was far from over. Even as he approached the final years of his life, his ambition continued to push him toward new horizons, toward the Middle East, Europe, and beyond. His vision of a connected, expansive world, held together by trade, law, and military might, was already beginning to take shape. Genghis Khan's genius lay not just in conquest, but in imagining a world that could be governed as a coherent whole, one where ideas, wealth, and power flowed under his guidance. History would remember him not only as a fearsome warrior, but as a leader who changed the very fabric of the medieval world. From the steppes of Mongolia to the cities of Central Asia, his campaigns redefined borders, economies, and societies. He had transformed the Mongols from fragmented tribes into a force capable of altering the course of history, leaving a legacy that endures to this day. As Genghis Khan approached the final years of his life, his empire had become an unprecedented force, stretching from the steppes of Mongolia to the deserts of Central Asia and the fortified cities of northern China. Yet, the magnitude of his conquest did not dull his vision. It expanded it. Even in his later years, he continued to plan campaigns, study governance, and refine the systems that made the Mongol Empire durable. One of his final and most enduring contributions was the creation of a succession system that could sustain the empire beyond his lifetime. Unlike many conquerors who relied solely on personal authority, Genghis Khan divided his empire among his sons and trusted generals, ensuring that regions were managed efficiently while still pledging loyalty to the great Khan. This foresight allowed the Mongol Empire to expand further after his death, avoiding the immediate. The fragmentation that often plagued empires following the deaths of their great leaders was a challenge Genghis Khan sought to overcome. But his impact extended far beyond issues of succession. He profoundly influenced culture, trade, and diplomacy. He secured trade routes spanning from East Asia to the Middle East, ensuring the safety of merchants and travelers. The Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace and stability enforced by the Mongols, facilitated the widespread circulation of goods, ideas, and technologies across Eurasia. Scholars, artisans, and even religious figures moved with unprecedented freedom, leading to a unique cross-pollination of cultures. His religious tolerance was equally groundbreaking. While he demanded allegiance and respect for the Mongol state, he allowed conquered peoples to maintain their own spiritual practices. Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, and shamanistic traditions coexisted under his rule. This pragmatic approach ensured stability and cooperation within his multi-ethnic empire, demonstrating his understanding that lasting power required more than just military strength. It necessitated governance that respected human diversity. Yet Genghis Khan's life was not without considerable personal cost. The relentless pace of conquest, the weighty responsibility for millions of subjects, and the necessary brutality for maintaining control exacted a toll on both him and those closest to him. He bore witness to the deaths of friends, family, and countless soldiers. In a life defined by ambition, personal loss was unavoidable. However, he seldom allowed grief to hinder action, embodying the principle that the demands of leadership often necessitate prioritizing the empire over personal well-being. Despite his reputation for ruthlessness, Genghis Khan inspired genuine loyalty and admiration. Generals and warriors served him not solely out of fear, but also out of respect for his leadership, intelligence, and strategic vision. His policy of rewarding talent over noble birth fostered innovation and courage, creating a meritocratic culture where individuals could rise based on their abilities. This approach proved crucial in maintaining unity across such diverse and geographically vast territories. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had fundamentally reshaped the world. His conquest redefined political boundaries, transformed trade networks, and initiated cultural exchanges that would influence societies for centuries to come. The Mongol Empire, which became one of the largest contiguous empires in history, served as a conduit for the movement of ideas, technologies, and people across Eurasia, a legacy that persisted long after his death. Perhaps the most enduring lesson of Genghis Khan lies not in the sheer scale of his empire or the brutality of his campaigns, but in his visionary approach to leadership. He combined strategic genius, meticulous organization, keen psychological insight, and administrative skills to create a system that would endure long after he was gone. He proved that even in a world often dictated by fear and tradition, it was possible to innovate, adapt, and reshape the course of history. His story also serves as a reminder that greatness often comes at a high price. Genghis Khan's unwavering ambition demanded sacrifice of himself, his family, and countless others. Yet, through these sacrifices, he left an indelible mark on history matched by few. The empire he established stands as more than just a testament to military prowess. It is proof of what human organization, vision, and determination can achieve. As we reflect on the life of Genghis Khan, we see a man who rose from a small, fractured tribe to become a force that reshaped entire continents. He harnessed the raw energy of the steppes, the ingenuity of conquered peoples, and the power of disciplined leadership to forge an empire unlike any other. His legacy is complex, a blend of destruction and creation, terror and governance, brutality and remarkable foresight. In every sense, Genghis Khan exemplifies the extremes of human ambition and capability, a figure whose story continues to fascinate historians and storytellers alike. Ultimately, Genghis Khan's empire was more than just land or wealth. It was a lasting lesson in strategy, leadership, and the profound consequences of vision. His life demonstrates how a single individual, armed with intelligence, discipline, and ambition, can leave an enduring mark on history. And though he passed away nearly 8 centuries ago, the echoes of his conquests, governance, and ideas still resonate today, reminding us of the extraordinary reach of human potential.